"You don't belong here," the landlord hissed like a lock on a mouth, and his son laced his fingers with hers and said, "We're done choosing cowardice." The first time Nia Lawson saw Theo Brackett, he was standing in the blown-out brightness of Trauma 2, shirt streaked with someone else's blood, eyelashes glittered with the salt of fear. It was 12:41, men, the part of night the nurses called the soft hours when the city's roar thinned to a humming wire, and anyone who came through the sliding doors carried a secret. "BP 80/50, pulse 130, Nia called, already at the gurney. The patient, a teenage boy in a threadbare hoodie, wheezed, blinking at the fluorescent sky. "Trauma panel, pipe and cross, 2 large-bore IVs. "Sir." She glanced at the man with the blood on his shirt. "Step back." "I found him in our building," he said, breathless, voice scraping. "Elevator stuck again. He tried the stairs and fell. There's no light on the 3rd-floor landing." "Step back." Nia wasn't unkind. She was precise. Precision saved lives when the city threw chaos indoors. She leaned over the boy, the scent of stale cigarette smoke and winter air tangled in his hoodie. "Hey, kid, can you tell me your name?" "Louis." A whisper. "Louis, I'm Nia. You're safe. We're going to get you fixed up." She squeezed his hand. Over her shoulder, the man, tall, late 20s, white, a kind of undone handsomeness that had never needed to beg, hovered, hands shaking. A security guard guided him toward the hall, but he lingered at the glass. Stitches, x-rays, a flood of fluids, a scan to rule out internal bleeding, an hour flattened and expanded around alarms. When Louis finally slept, IV humming like low tide, Nia stepped into the hallway to log vitals. The man was still there, shoulders pressed to the window as if he could push himself through. He straightened when she emerged. "Is he okay?" "Stable." Nia peeled off her gloves. "We're keeping him tonight to watch for complications." "That elevator," he said, voice low, furious in a way that made him shake. "It's been broken for weeks. They keep saying parts on order, like it's a magic spell." Nia's pen halted. "Your building?" "Maple Court," he said. "On Ellicott." Nia's spine tightened with recognition. Maple Court, her building. The place where radiator pipes clanged like chains, and the mailroom bulletin board grew new predatory notices every week. "I know it," he exhaled, a frayed laugh. "Of course you do. Everyone knows Maple Court." She wrote Luce's numbers, steadying herself with task and ink. "I'm glad you brought him in." "I'm Theo," he said, holding out a palm he then seemed to remember was smeared with dried blood. He let it drop. "I'm sorry for—" He gestured at everything. The boy, the glass, the hour. "Nia?" She nodded. Up close she could see the muscles in his jaw working. Grief trapped under restraint. He looked like someone who had been taught that apologies were the only currency you could spend when real repair was too expensive. "Do you live there?" he asked. "I do." The words slid out before she could decide how much to tell a stranger whose eyes had already mapped her. "How do you stand it?" he blurted, then winced. I'm sorry, that was—" Nia's mouth lifted, wry. "The same way any of us do. We build a small life inside a larger negligence." He nodded like she'd handed him a language he'd been grasping for. When silence settled, it wasn't empty. It held it current. He cleared his throat. "Can I leave my number?" "In case if Louise needs anything, or if you ever—" He faltered again, shy in a way that didn't match the height, the jaw. "I can replace the bulb on the 3rd-floor landing tomorrow. I should have done it already." "Maintenance is supposed to," Nia said. "But sure." She took the paper he offered, a torn receipt corner with a number that looked like a confession. At 2:19 on her 10-minute break, Nia texted him a photo of the hallway outside Trauma 2. It was empty, the kind of empty that promises a reprieve. She typed, "Louis is sleeping. Thanks for carrying him in. Replace the bulb." Then, please, and deleted the last word. At 4:05, the night unfurled its last trouble, and Nia walked into the staff lounge where the clock ticked like an 4 drip. She found Theo there, sitting on a cracked vinyl chair, with a styrofoam cup of coffee he hadn't sipped. He stood, startled, then smiled like a sunrise that knew it was trespassing. "Still here?" she asked. "I didn't want to go back yet," he admitted. "To Maple Court." Same. It slipped out again, truths always did in the soft hours. She thought of 3B, of the note that had been slid under her door last week. Tenants who can't pay on time should consider communities that fit their budgets. Signed with a smirk of corporate letterhead, Brackett Property Holdings. Landlord's son was at the inspection last month, Nia said, almost to herself. Smug guy in a gray coat, standing behind the clipboard man like a shadow, pretending to be useful. Theo flinched. So small a movement you'd miss it if you weren't trained to watch bodies tell the rest of the story. "Yeah," he said softly. "I know him." Nia's phone buzzed. A trauma alert rattled the ceiling. She tucked her braids into her cap, finished her coffee in a practice swallow, and gave Theo a nod that wasn't a promise and wasn't a refusal. Just a knot tied in a shared rope. When dawn bled into the city, Theo walked out to the parking lot with her. It smelled like cold and old tires. "I'll fix the bulb," he said. "Tonight." "I'll hold you to it," Nia said, and then she watched him watch her and realized their lives had already shifted. The soft hours broke. The day arrived with its ordinary cruelties. In 3B, the radiator would breathe out its metal ghosts, and on the third floor landing a light socket waited, empty as a mouth learning how to say enough. Nia had never told anyone this. On Tuesday nights she baked. Banana bread, brownies, a quick almond cake, with slices fanned like a sun offerings to the building that sometimes acted like an enemy, but also held her through sleep. Magic wasn't real, but generosity changed the air. She left half the pan outside Miss Gomez's door when the woman's arthritis flared. She slid foil-tinted slices to the Morales kids when their mother's second shift stretched too long. On Tuesday, Theo showed up at 8:03 p.m. with a ladder and a canvas tote bulging with bulbs, wire nuts, a voltage tester. He knocked, then knocked again softer, as if practicing kindness in increments. Nia opened the door in an oversized sweater, flour dusting her forearm like unwritten chalk. "This is either unbelievable timing or a spiritual test," she said, stepping into the hall. "I brought an army of light." Theo hoisted the tote. "And a peace offering." He held up a jar. Honey, the good kind, thick as dusk. They fixed the third-floor landing. First the bulb, the brittle socket. Theo worked with a care that surprised her, labeling the circuit on the breaker panel with real words instead of the cryptic 3FLNDG, scrawled there before. Miss Gomez opened her door, watching with the blank skepticism of a woman who'd seen too many promises hauled into her hallway and left like trash. "You live here?" she asked Theo. "No," he said, and then added, like a man who believed in penalties for lying, "I should." Nia swallowed, the strange sense of relief his honesty gave her. They moved down to the mailroom, where a fluorescent tube flickered a strobe of headache. Theo tested, replaced, tested again, until the light steadied. After, Nia cut him a slice of still warm almond cake. They sat on the stairs like kids who'd skipped church. She watched how he ate like a person raised on abundance who'd learned late. Painfully, that taking slowly honored the hand that offered. "I have to tell you something," he said, thumb worrying the edge of the paper plate. The joke in his mouth died before it got out. "My last name is Brackett." The hallway tile seemed to tilt under Nia's feet. As in Victor Brackett is my father." He said it with the shame of a confession and the rigidity of a practiced sentence. "And Brackett Property Holdings is us." The cake went sweet to 10 on Nia's tongue. She put the plate on the step between them, a marker. "You knew I live here." "I didn't. Not when we met. Nia, I swear." He lifted his hands, then lowered them. "I recognized you at the inspection because I'd seen you at the hospital that time months ago when my father came in with chest pains. You were kind to him while he insulted the nurse who brought his chart. I didn't forget that." She remembered. A man with a gold ring like a full stop, dismissing a black nurse's questions as if they were flies. Nia had stepped in with her smile that wasn't a smile. She remembered the son off to the side, quiet, attentive, tired in a way money couldn't rest. "Why are you telling me now?" she asked. "Because I want to be more than apologies," he said, voice lowest at the end. "I want to fix what I can. But first you get to decide if you ever want to see me again." Anger didn't roar in Nia. It came like cold steadily from the toes up. "You could have said this before you changed the bulbs." "I should have," he said. "I was a coward." "Do you know what your father's company has done here?" Nia heard her own voice, how it had learned to make quiet dangerous. The cash discounts offered to tenants who leave early. The accidental lockouts. The 2 months last winter when the heat didn't reach the east side of the building and Miss Gomez slept in her coat. Theo's mouth tightened. "I've seen some of the emails. Not all. Some. Nia, I didn't want to know. I told myself property was complicated. Legal this, logistics that. But it's cruelty. Written down." He met her eyes like a man standing at a cliff no one else acknowledged. "If I bring you proof, would you help me bring him down?" She stared at him, heart kicking. This was the part of the hour that wasn't soft at all. It was surgical, precise. "I'm a nurse, I'm not a lawyer." "You're a leader," he said simply, and it landed like a hand on a shoulder you didn't know you needed. "The tenants already listened to you." The lights he'd fixed made the hallway honest. Nia thought of Louis, of his whispered loose like a pledge. She thought of the notes under her door, and of baking on Tuesdays, because sugar was a small rebellion against a man who thought he could make them bitter. "Bring what you have," she said at last. "If it's real, we move." He exhaled, a sound like relief and terror braided. "It's real. And Theo," she added, because lines had to be drawn clean. "We are not a we. Not until truth starts moving." He nodded. The soft hours were over. The night had its fist around their lives. He kissed 2 fingers and tapped the new light they'd installed, like a superstition learned on the job. "Then let's turn it on." What they found was rot, documented and signed. In a coffee shop 3 blocks from the hospital, Theo slid a laptop across to Nia and the tenants' committee group that had met for months in the laundry room under the hum of dryers, voices dampened by lint and fatigue. Ms. Gomez, the Morales sisters, Mr. Patel from 5A, who spoke in careful constructions like a man building a bridge. Emails. Recommend strategic outages to encourage turnover in non-preferred units. A spreadsheet with a column labeled Tenant Profile, pairing rent figures with coded slurs. Photos. Patched pipes that leaked again as if the patches were performance art. An internal memo. Avoid communication trail with 3B Lawson. She documents. Nia felt her stomach flip, not with nausea but with a recognition so sharp it registered as pain. "They flagged me," she said, almost laughing. It made sense. She had emailed, logged, recorded, held onto paper like life vests. "You're a problem," Theo said, a little proud. "Good." Miss Gomez's teeth flashed. "I would like to be a bigger one." They built a plan. Mr. Patel knew a legal aid attorney who owed him a favor. The Morales sisters were social media fluent and had a cousin who could cut a reel that would eat the internet alive. Nia turned the coffee shop playlists into the steady metronome of action. List after list, a nurse's precision molded to a different body, a building in need of triage. "Are you prepared to put your name on this?" The attorney, Maya Singh, asked over Zoom the next day, as the building faces arranged themselves into a digital chorus. "My name, my face, everything," Nia said, before anyone else could speak. Her pulse ticked at her throat. "The record already has me." "Good," Maya said. "Co-op, rent escrow, injunctive relief for repairs. With the paper trail your friend has provided, we can make this move." Friend. The word hung between Nia and Theo like a ladder suspended in air. He didn't look at her box on the screen. He was busy on a mission inside the enemy's house. Every time he clicked his mouse, he looked a little more like someone who'd blown up his bridge back and was now inventing a new river. At work, Nia moved through the EA with a new clarity. Watching a chest rise, she thought about elevators that didn't, calling a code. She thought about the emergency only some people acknowledged. Triage was triage. You decided who needed what in which order with the resources you had. She gave herself to both rooms and felt the tearing. It was a good pain. It told her she was alive. The microaggressions sharpened. In the lobby, the security guard now asked for her ID like a ritual rather than a courtesy. In her building, a notice appeared. Noise complaints will result in fines. She could hear her own steps soften automatically, as though the hallway were teaching her to walk like a trespasser. Theo texted apologies that did not try to be absolution. Saw the notice. It wasn't approved through the proper process. I'm finding who did it. She replied with a single word, find. They met rarely and briefly, in the small public places where privacy could hide park benches, quiet corners of the hospital cafeteria, and the hour after lunch when the world went dull. When Theo reached for her hand, she didn't allow it yet. But once, in a booth behind the soda fountain, when he closed his eyes and said, "He thinks tenants are inventory," Nia did what she could. She pressed her palm to the back of his neck, a nurse's touch that said, "You are feverish with grief, and I am here until it breaks." The first protest was a simmering thing organized by the Morales sisters. They printed the internal emails on foam boards. They read aloud the euphemisms until the crowd knew they were knives. The city councilwoman came. Cameras came. Across the street, a man in a gray coat stood under the awning of Brackett Property Holdings, with his hands in his pockets like he wasn't holding a lit match to his own house. "Victor's watching," Theo murmured beside Nia, baseball cap pulled low. "Good," Nia said. "Let him see what truth is shaped like when it moves." That night someone slid a note under her door with a line of words so thin they bled. "You don't belong here." Nia read it under the new hallway light, which made everything too honest to ignore. She didn't bake. Instead, she drafted a statement for the press. "We belong where we live. The law agrees. The kindness we practice is not permission for neglect." When she finished, she texted Theo a photo of the note. He wrote back immediately. "At my father's in the morning," he called. "He knows it was me." She stared at the green bubbles, at the way the phone turned the heart into a series of signals that could be dropped. She typed, erased, typed again. "If you can't stand in the room, walk out." "I can stand in the room," he wrote, "but I might have to walk out afterward, with nothing." "Then walk," she replied, throat thick. "We bring blankets. We know how to keep people warm through a long night." Victor Brackett's office was a glass aquarium, cold light. Untouchable plants, the city glittering behind him, like a private kingdom. The carpet muffled footsteps. Even the air conditioning whispered. Theo had sat in this room since he was a boy, legs dangling, learning that power sounded like volume turned low. His father liked the world quiet, because quiet meant compliant. "Sit," Victor said, not looking up from the portfolio opened on the desk. Theo remained standing. "We are under investigation," he said, and surprised himself by adding, "We deserve to be." Victor lifted his eyes, pale coins. "You've been reading fiction from the laundry room." "I've been reading your emails," Theo replied. He slid a folder across the desk tabs labeled strategic outages, turnover incentives, tenant profiles. "You signed most of them." Victor didn't touch the folder. "You are my son," he said, voice smooth as a billable hour. "You are not a whistle." "I'm a man," Theo said. "And I don't want what we've built on other people's shivering." Victor smiled with small teeth. "We?" His gaze drifted past Theo's shoulder. "Is she here now? The nurse with the eyes that make men confess? Does she coach your courage?" "Don't talk about her." Theo kept his tone mild. Anger was a door his father loved to watch him run into. "You think teaming up with these tenants will make you clean?" Victor leaned back, steepling fingers. "You will have no job, no trust fund, no roof. In 2 months you will come back and ask for forgiveness." Theo laughed, a brief bark that startled them both. I learned forgiveness from the people we underheat and overcharge, he said. I don't need yours. A muscle in Victor's jaw ticked. Get out, he said softly, which made it land harder. Take nothing. Return nothing. You are cut off. The words hit Theo like the clean click of a guillotine. He picked up the folder evidence he would not leave in the room that created it, and walked out. The door sighed shut behind him, as if relieved. In the elevator he watched his reflection stutter in the chrome, the obedient son and the man who had just stepped into weather. He texted Nia one word, cut. The 3 letters looked too thin to carry the slice they described. Outside, November light made edges honest. He laughed again, this time in a voice that admitted terror. Nia's reply arrived. We have you. For a while, we was logistics. Theo crashed on friends' couches, people who had liked him before they learned his last name, who now liked him for how he was trying to remove it from certain deeds. He stocked shelves at a hardware store, a place that believed in parts you could hold, unions, couplings, bulbs. At night he read housing law until the letters blurred. In the morning he sent Maya Singh another piece of the record. He did not ask Nia for comfort. She offered what she could anyway, the kind that didn't try to be anesthesia. Once, in the soft hours outside the hospital, she handed him a thermos of ginger tea and said, Drink. Keep going. The building bit back. Notices appeared. Noise complaints will result in fines. The elevator stalled, then lurched into embarrassed motion. Someone scrawled rats on the laundry room whiteboard. Protesters gathered. Cameras came. Across the street, Victor stood under the Brackett awning like a statue. After a late meeting resolutions, escrow, a spreadsheet of volunteers, Theo and Nia ended up alone in the newly functional elevator. The fluorescent light was too honest. You should have told me the day after the EA, Nia said, voice tight with the exhaustion that makes kindness brittle. I know, Theo said. But I'm here now. You're here now because you're cut off, she answered. Is it conviction if it only started costing you after the bill arrived? His face changed in the wrong way, draining rather than flushing. You think I'm doing this to impress you, he said. Like truth is flowers on a date. I think you were in the room when my heat didn't click on, she said, quietly, a blade wrapped in gauze. He stepped back as if she'd struck him. I wasn't, he said, and it didn't matter. The elevator chimed, doors parting on a hallway that felt like judgment. He reached out, stopping just short of her sleeve. Nia, I can't hold you through this and hold this building through this, and also hold the ghost of your father between us, she said. Not tonight. The doors slid closed on his face. Movies make that moment grand. Inside it, it was simply a door. He slept that night on a futon that remembered every previous back. At 4 a.m. he woke with his heart sprinting and learned panic doesn't respect your calendar. He went to the 24-hour laundromat and folded strangers' clothes in his head. By morning he told Maya Singh, I'm prepared to testify that I knew, and looked away. She nodded like a surgeon whose patient had finally agreed to be cut open. He called friends who worked at the company and asked them to save their consciences in PDFS. Some did, some hung up. One said, your father is going to crush you, and Theo replied, he already tried. On the second Thursday after the cut, he returned to Maple Court to deliver a stack of printed emails under locking binder clips. The lobby smelled like old mail and lemon cleaner. The elevator opened without complaint. The repair felt like someone else's apology, and he accepted it on behalf of everyone who'd been taught to wait. When he reached the third-floor landing, the light Nia had fixed with him was blazing. Beneath it, taped to the wall, someone had written in blue ink, We belong where we live. He touched the tape, then stepped back, hands at his sides, learning the posture of a man who chooses a future without asking permission from the past. The courthouse smelled like dust and old paper, the perfume of decisions that arrived late and still expected gratitude. Nia buttoned her thrift store blazer in the bathroom mirror and practiced breathing that didn't look like fear. Outside, the tenants gathered in their good shoes and best voices. Miss Gomez wore a church hat that could shade a small family. The Morales sisters had a folder of printouts and a phone tripod sticking out of a backpack like a flag. "Ready?" Maya Singh asked, meeting Nia at the elevator. The attorney's eyes were the kind that stayed steady when bad weather rolled in. "As I'll ever be," Nia said. In courtroom 6B, fluorescent light flattened everyone into the same pallor. Victor's side of the aisle looked pressed and starched, a senior partner with a pen like a scalpel, a junior clerk with a stack of motions so tall it made a tower, and a property manager whose smile said he had never apologized to a plant, let alone a person. The judge hung. Ruth Ellis, a black woman with silver-headed temples and patience shaped like a sword, took the bench and made the room remember itself. Maya started simple. "Miss Lawson, where do you live?" "Maple Court, apartment 3B. "How long?" "5 years. "What repairs were requested in the last 2? Nia opened her folder. The nurse in her had trained for this. Dates like heartbeats, details like vital signs. Heat outages, January 6th to 18th 20, February 3rd to 7th 20. Elevator, down for a total of 21 days, spread across March and April. Stairwell bulbs, out on levels 2 and 3 for 6 weeks. Water discoloration, 4 separate incidents, photos in Exhibit B. "Did you document these?" "Yes." She held up emails, stamped complaints, photos of thermometers next to radiators that might as well have been sculptures. "I also kept a log." She raised a notebook, not pretty, just relentless. Maya nodded. "And did anyone from Brackett Property Holdings acknowledge these issues?" "Sometimes," Nia said, "with parts on order and thanks for your patience, but not with heat." The defense rose. "Miss Lawson, are you a professional tenant organizer?" "I'm a nurse," Nia said. "Is it true you have personal animus toward Mr. Brackett's son?" "I have personal animus toward cold apartments," Nia said, and let the room breathe at the line before continuing. "I care that my neighbors don't have to choose between space heaters and rent. Isn't it true you refused access to maintenance on 2 occasions?" "I refused access to a man who arrived without ID or work order and tried to wedge his boot in my door." Her voice didn't rise. It narrowed. Real maintenance knows how to knock. Laughter fizzed at the back of the room. Judge Ellis tapped her gavel once, not to punish, just to remind. Maya called others. Mr. Patel with spreadsheets, calm as an accountant at a rescue. The Morales sisters with videos that turned euphemism into evidence. A pediatrician from the clinic down the block who spoke clinically about coughs in winter that didn't have to happen. Each testimony stacked until the wall looked less like hope and more like fact. Then Maya called Theo. He stood with both hands on the Bible like a man whose palms had finally learned use. Up close, the cut from Chapter 4 still showed, the slight hollowness around his eyes, the way his jaw had discovered endurance. "State your name." "Theodore Victor Brackett." A Russell people love the sound of a family name betraying itself. "What is your relationship to Brackett Property Holdings?" "I was employed as an executive assistant to the CEO, Victor Brackett." "My father?" "Did you have access to internal communications regarding Maple Court?" "Yes." "What did you observe?" Theo looked at the judge, then at the tenants, then at his father, and finally at his own hands. Emails referring to strategic outages to encourage turnover. A tenant profile spreadsheet with coded descriptions of people. An instruction to avoid creating a paper trail with Miss Lawson in 3B because she documents. He swallowed. "That was my idea of a compliment then." "It isn't." Maya placed a bait-stamped packet on the evidence table. "Are these true and correct copies of the documents you provided?" "They are." "Why did you decide to produce them?" "Because I knew," he said, voice small and true, and I looked away. "I don't want to live like that anymore." The defense tried to gut him gently. "Mr. Brackett, are you testifying against your father for financial gain?" "I have no financial gain left to get," Theo said. He didn't look at Victor. He looked at Nia, then back to the lawyer. "This will make my life harder. It already has. You harbor resentment because you were cut off?" "I harbor responsibility," Theo said. "Resentment is lighter." Judge Ellis asked her own questions, quick and precise. She was building something in her head and needed the exact screws. When Theo stepped down, the room's temperature changed. Truth, when it stretched, altered air. In the corridor afterward, cameras sprouted like overnight mushrooms. Maya handled them with sentences that sounded like scaffolds. The tenants sang anyway, off-key and luminous. Nia kept to the wall, body thrumming with too much adrenaline to be touched. Theo let the press wash past him and found a quiet in the seam where hallway turned toward stairs. "Can I," he started and stopped, "walk you to work?" "It's across the street," she said. "Then can I walk you across the street?" His smile was so bare of charm it inoculated against cynicism. They crossed. Traffic hissed like a tired snake. Inside the hospital, the soft hours had not yet started, but the night shift was stirring the subtle choreography of handoffs and hopes. In a dim corridor off the main, Theo stopped at the threshold, as if he'd reached sacred ground. "I want to say I'm sorry in sentences, not with a bouquet that wilts," he said. "I believed an easy story because it was heated and lit. I stayed inside it longer than a decent person should. You were outside making heat anyway. I'm late." "I know I'm late." His throat worked. "I love you." Nia closed her eyes and opened them so that nothing urgent in her face could be mistaken. "I love you," she said, steady as a charting line. "But loving me is not a bypass around work. It's shoes for the road." "I've got shoes," he said, a shaky laugh loosening his mouth. "Ugly ones, steel-toed." "Good," she said, and placed her hand at the back of his neck, clinical, tender a touch that said, "I feel the fever breaking, but we are still dosing, still hydrating, still watching the night." He leaned into the contact like a pilgrim at the one cool wall. "Tell me what to carry." "Chairs," she said, "for meetings that last too long. Cases of water, binders, bylaws, boredom. Tell your friends to save more emails. Ask your old colleagues to remember their humanity and put it in writing. And when you're tired, don't ask me to set down the building to pick you up. Lie down beside the work and rest there." "I can do that," he said. A code blue blared 2 floors over. Nia checked the board, already turning. She kissed him once the kind you give a runner at the starting gun. "Go," Theo said, and watched her disappear into the place where she made strangers live. He stood alone in the quiet strip of hallway and understood. Testimony hadn't ended. It had just changed rooms. The day the papers were signed, the sky couldn't pick a mood. Sun sliced in, then tucked itself behind cloud like a shy relative. In Maple Court's community room, folding tables wore thrifted tablecloths. Clipboards lined up like little soldiers. Someone brought jollof. Someone else a pot of chicken soup that steamed up the windows. On the wall, the Morales sisters had taped a banner, "We belong where we live." Maya did the loyally walk through with the patience of a midwife. "This is the transfer agreement. This is the escrow release schedule. These are the co-op bylaws you all drafted together. These are signatures." Victor didn't appear. His lawyer did, immaculate and damp at the edges, like a man caught in unexpected weather. He slid documents across the table with fingertips that looked sanitized between motions. "Brackett Property Holdings acknowledges," he began, and Miss Gomes coughed so loudly the lawyer had to start again with different verbs. The first signatures felt ceremonial. The 10th felt like labor. By the 20th, the room understood it was doing something irreversible and looked around to see whether anyone would stop them. No one did. The pen kept traveling. Names unfurled in various handwritings. Loops and spikes, cramped capitals, careful drafts. Theo, who had negotiated the numbers into something almost human, kept checking the totals like a man listening for a heart he'd revived. When the last page was signed, a silence that wasn't fear settled. Then applause, untidy and gorgeous. The banner sagged on one corner, as if crying. Mr. Patel cried and apologized for crying. Everyone told him to keep going. They elected a board. Miss Gomez, of course. Mr. Patel, with his bridge builder metaphors. The Morales sisters who had turned Heir into attention. Nia declined a chair but accepted a committee. Repairs and wellness, 2 words that meant the same thing here. The Brackett lawyer cleared his throat. On behalf of my client, tell your client, Miss Gomez said, voice calm as cast iron, that this building survived him. Laughter rolled like a small storm. The lawyer blinked. There are still inspections to pass, he offered, as if conjuring bureaucracy might shrink joy. And we will pass them, Nia said, with heat on, elevators working, and lights that a child can trust. Theo moved through the room, carrying chairs, water, copies, a screwdriver. He had learned that humility wasn't a speech. It was a set of tasks. People thanked him with nods that didn't pretend amnesia. He didn't ask for it. He simply kept his hands busy until the muscle memory became part of him. In the lull that follows celebration, when plates wear crumbs and babies slip from laps to floors, Nia found herself by the mailboxes with Maya. You did it, the attorney said, in the tone doctors use for patients who do most of the healing themselves. We did it, Nia answered. You taught us how to read the instructions, and we kept breathing, Maya smiled. That's my favorite kind of law. Near the elevator, Theo's phone buzzed. He stared at the screen like it had said his birth name out loud. Nia crossed to him. Victor? She asked. He nodded, thumb hovering. He never calls twice. Answer, she said. He stepped into the stairwell for the bad acoustics honesty invites. The call was short. Victor's sentences clipped, feigning neutral. I hope you enjoyed your little theater, his father said. You will tire of it. Public affection is fickle. Blood is not. I'm learning different science, Theo said. It involves neighbors. A breath his father about to deploy something old. Your mother wants grandchildren, Victor said finally, like a man sending a hostage note by carrier pigeon. You might think of proximity. Love isn't a ransom, Theo said. If we have children, they'll learn heat is a right. He hung up before the next sentence could bruise him. When he re-entered the room, he looked like someone who had reopened a wound correctly. What did he say? Nia asked. That we're a hobby, Theo said, half smile not hiding the ache. Then let's be the kind that feeds people, she replied. Hobbies can be holy. A maintenance to-do list materialized on a poster board. The handwriting changed, but the verbs stayed plain. Patch, replace, seal, repaint, test. Theo signed up for 3 things he could do and 2 he could learn. Nia claimed stairwell sweeps and wellness checks. A visit to every floor after dusk to see who needed light bulbs, who needed a ride, who needed simply to be asked. They took those first sweeps together. On 2, they found an elderly man asleep in a chair by his door because he liked to smell the hallway cooking. They left him a note to join the potluck. On 4, a little girl named Joy pointed at the banner and asked if they could add a heart. The Morales sisters handed her a marker like it was a scepter. On 3, the bulb blazed over the landing, where truth had first changed its clothes. Nia touched the fixture like a relic and laughed when she realized the blue ink note tucked into the frame was new. Thank you for the elevator. Luce's mom. They ended in Nia's kitchen with rice, plantains, and that almond cake she baked when she needed sugar to argue on her behalf. Theo washed dishes, because that's where he put feelings. Out the window, Maple Court looked almost pretty of face after tears, rinsed and open. I've been thinking, Nia said, drying a plate, about forgiveness. Theo braced without meaning to. Do I get some? Pieces, she said. Forgiveness isn't all at once. It's installments like everything else in this city. You keep paying. We keep living. I can do installments. He set a plate in the rack. I'm good at schedules now. She leaned against the counter, a smile ghosting at her mouth. You're allowed to be happy, she said, even while we're fixing. I am, he said, surprised to hear how true. It's a quiet kind. Soft hours happy, she offered. Soft hours happy, he agreed. Later, the room emptied of guests and a fullness of silence settled. The good kind, the kind that says there's more than enough chair for two. Theo took Nia's hand, not as a pledge he couldn't keep, but as a practice he could. They walked the hallway again just because it now belonged to them. At her door, a scrap of paper lay like a fallen feather. He bent to pick it up. No letterhead. Just a handwriting that worked harder than it needed to. I complained about your music last year. Sorry. Bring me some next time. 4C. Nia laughed, that clean sound that shakes stale dust from corners. I will, she said to the note, and then to Theo, we will. He laced his fingers with hers and looked down the long spine of the corridor, where bulbs glowed like vertebrae finely aligned. You don't belong here, the landlord had hissed once, a lock trying to be a mouth. Theo squeezed Nia's hand and felt, bone deep, the new grammar of the building. We do. We always did. He kissed her no trumpets, just a seal on paperwork their lives would keep amending. Outside, a siren stitched the city back to itself. Inside, radiators knocked politely, and then settled, learning the rhythm of heat that stayed. We're done choosing cowardice, he said. No flare, no witness, only the soft hours and a light bright enough to read by. And because courage loves company, the building answered with a small miracle. Somewhere below, the elevator opened, and nobody flinched.